Naigevanan Melanin. I've been asked to offer some detail about my Middle-earth Ranger kit or costume or gear, what have you. So I shall comply. First thing I should say is that when we say kit, we're actually borrowing a term from, I believe it's medieval reenactors in Great Britain, and I believe they actually borrow that term from military servicemen in the Great Britain. Kit. It refers to equipment or gear. In this case, we're saying soft kit and hard kit. Obviously, soft kit is clothing, costume items. Hard kit can be weapons, can be buckles and things like that. Sometimes that distinction's a little bit unclear, depending on who you're talking to. Anyway, just wanted to clear that up. So we're going to look at soft kit, whatever that means. What I'm wearing right now is a Moroccan Burnoose, or more accurately, it's a reproduction of a Moroccan Burnoose. Let me show you something a little bit. It's actually made of two pieces. The hood is kind of a rectangular piece sewed onto the body. The body is basically, let's see if I can get this in the shot. Maybe not. It's a half circle, and it's linked in the front by a throat piece. Throw it over the shoulders so you can see how it drapes. It can be worn like this. Right. It can be worn over the head. Oops. Tactically assume you have to be ready to have your vision obscured when you're putting this over your head. What I can also do is throw this over the shoulder and this over the shoulder. And this goes back and sort of anchors those pieces back there. But of course, one thing that people notice is that the cape, it's easy to throttle yourself. Anyway, if you have a friend who's going to Morocco, or if you're there yourself, see if you can pick up a Moroccan Burnoose. This is actually made from a pattern based on an actual Moroccan Burnoose. And let's see now. Folkwear produces that, the pattern for the Moroccan Burnoose. I believe this pattern was made in '82. Their website still exists, folkwear.com. You could look it up that way, or you could just type in Moroccan Burnoose pattern, and you'll see it appear magically. One thing I'd like to mention about this pattern is that it's what I'm doing in this case is trying to duplicate the cloaks that were worn in Peter Jackson's movie The Fellowship of the Ring, the ones that were gifted to the Fellowship by Lady Galadriel and Lord Celeborn and at Lothlorien. Now the fabric on those was kind of interesting. I couldn't really duplicate this, but I found this at a fabric store in the bargain bin, and I just had to have it. It's close enough. One of the things about Middle-earth Ranger reenactment is that we're not simply concerned with cosplay, to show up and say this is what that character looked like, but it's practical. These things have to be useful and you have to be able to trek in them, you have to be able to camp out in them, or hunt, or fight. It's all got to be realistically and practical. This is a little thin to sleep in. In retrospect, I might have gotten... An easy thing for you is getting a military surplus blanket that's mostly wool. That has plenty of... Well, it's made for sleeping in. And wool is very useful in many different environments. Stays warm when it's wet, etc. In fact, the pattern is not necessarily accurate to the Tolkien's descriptions. In many cases, he has characters who have a cape and a cloak, a cape and a hood, and they take off the hood and hang it someplace, and assuming that the cape is still being worn as a garment. So, and that is actually accurate to most medieval garments, is that the cape was normally a separate item from the hood. This one is different, and that there is actually plenty of later cloaks, capes from the after the Renaissance period, the Romantic period, or whatever you call that, where the hood is actually part of the cloak. But that's not medieval, and it also departs from Tolkien's actual descriptions. So there's a lot of experimentation and discovery to be done with this yet. The rest, the jerkin, again, I looked at, went to a good website called Alley Cat Scratch. They've got a lot of discussion about the actual costumes that were worn in the Lord of the Rings series, Peter Jackson's movies, actual photographs, designs, suggestions, ideas, and I wanted to follow that to test it, to see how practical it was. Strider is actually wearing a duster made out of leather, which is a long coat. And A, I don't think that was real practical. B, I don't think that was really anything that Tolkien would have described. And B, and C, I think there's a third one. C, it's a lot of leather, it's expensive, and I don't need to kill that many cows. However, he was wearing a vest beneath the duster, and at one point he had the duster off, and it was just like rowing the boat or something like that. And a vest or jerkin is a common garment that is used, that was used in the Middle Ages by men-at-arms, longbowmen, lower class individuals, whatever. And here it is. So I tried to look carefully at the actual vest or jerkin at the Alley Cat Scratch website to see how closely I could get it. Looking for the details, including the way this was fastened and how it was stitched together. I think they were trying to say, okay, here's a frontiersman or a desperate ranger on his own, and here's how crudely he was stitched together as a sort of a character illustration. However, anybody, 87-year-old ranger or an accomplished frontiersman would be able to stitch a straighter line of stitches than you see in the costume. They just wanted to have a little bit of crudeness there. I went basically into the leather shop and tried to find some leather that looked like this. First stop was, of course, the deerskin or buckskin. Usually, at least in the United States, the buckskin appears to be chrome tan, and it's very soft and flexible. And I don't think it would be really the right character for this. If I had some elk hide that was oak tanned, that might have the right qualities that a medieval ranger might have been wearing. But then I found some skins that I'm really not sure if they were pig skins or some sort of steer hide, but they were small, and they're fairly flexible and appear to be porous on both sides like a deer skin, probably bottom suede, but they did the job, and the two things converged together, and I said, here's what I'm going to be making this out of. The color was right, etc. Now, as far as the pattern is concerned, how do you cut something like this? It's pretty simple, but it's also easy to make mistakes. So, following the advice of the Alley Cat Scratch website, I went to some patterns I found at the fabric shop, right? And I just dug up something that was cheap and on sale, and this is like a set of costumes for a church's Christmas pageant or Easter pageant. Just something cheap and simple they could put together and put their people into for the pageant. And so this had a vest. And I said, here's a basic simple vest pattern. I'll cut it out. So what you do, you get this flimsy ass tissue paper that they have the costume on, and you transfer it. You get some paper shopping bags from the store. Cut those open, spread that out, transfer this to that. You might have to tape together some sections. And then you've got a good proportion, and you can start, try it on, tape it together, and see how that hangs on you. From there, you can start transferring it to the leather and start cutting out the leather, because at that point, you can't make any mistakes with leather. Once you cut it, that's it. It doesn't go back on again. So make sure you got the right measurements. So this is basically my interpretation of Strider's vest or jerkin from the movie. There are historical jerkins galore. There's lots of historical books and patterns. This one is from Period Patterns. I think it's periodpatterns.com or Medieval Miscellanea. I'm not sure if they're on their website, if they have a website, or they're still being sold, but sewingcentral.com. That might actually be a resource for you. If you're interested, look at some medieval costume patterns. There was one ship that was, I think it was pre-Elizabethan, the Mary Rose, famous ship. It sank. It had a bunch of soldiers on it, especially longbowmen, and they perished with their bows, with their arrows, with their garments. And there are not a few jerkins that were preserved and examined. A good resourceful ranger will find information about those and how they're made. It's not a route that I decided to pursue. I wanted to look at what Aragorn was wearing in the movie and test it to see how actually practical it was. Since movie costumes are not often just for looks, this works out pretty good. This is not going to repel arrows. This is not armor. It's hot when it's warm out. It's cold when it's cold out. I'm not, as I mentioned before, I'm not a real fan of leather clothing, but it did the job. It's all right. It looks, if people see me and they say, well, there's a ranger, right? Beneath this, I want to show you, this is actually the tunic I'm wearing under it is a departure from Aragorn's outfit from the movie. Got this secured on too tight here. And I didn't want to go with, he was wearing a sort of black, looks like it was black at one time and started to fade into gray shirt. And they show some details where it's actually, it's got some sort of stitch work on the shoulders. It's really kind of fancy. I think they wanted to contrast that with the crudeness of the vest. In this case, what I'm wearing under my jerkin is a tunic, a medieval tunic, or shirt. It's a reproduction of the shirt of St. Louis. This is a one of the French kings, or one of the early French kings, who's actually became a saint after his death, and his tunic was preserved and represents a very nice lightweight linen tunic, very practical and very versatile. It's not baggy, it's not fluffy. When I shoot my bow, this is not hanging too much in the way. Oh, I'm a left-handed archer, aren't I? It's a good practical one. It was off-white, as most linen is, and I dyed it. It's not really dark green, but it's a little bit better camouflage than I had before. Let's see. I want to say before I go any further, in your own pursuit for, I get a lot of people asking me, say, show me the costumes, tell me how to do this. I didn't do that. I had the same Google that you have. I had the same noodle between my ears that you have, and I just took it upon myself to research it. So I can give you guidance, I can give you certainly inspiration, but I want you to find your own way. One important ranger quality, I think, should be self-reliance. You don't send a guy out by himself into the wilderness to fight evil, by himself. Nobody's going to be holding his hand. And I want you to show me what you have too. Let me bring this down a little bit so I can show you the southerly parts of my outfit. This is just a pouch. I've made other pouches, but this is actually a kit that I bought at Tandy. If you've never done any leather working before, buy this. Get rid of the fringes that come with the kit. Use it for something else. But just the practice of stitching the leather, figuring out how all the pieces go together, it's a good beginning leather project. This was a little more advanced, something I came up by myself, mostly for going to Renaissance fairs and sticking my wallet in. But this time, it's for putting my fire-making kit and other things into. Finally, let's see how we're doing here. Now, that's not going to work. Let's crank this down just a little bit more. How are we doing here? That's good enough. This is simply a Minnetonka moccasin. They're everywhere. Just Google Minnetonka moccasin. They have tall moccasins. You can get this for about $100 online. Another caveat, of course, that'll have fringes. They love to put fringes on things. Lose the fringes. Get a good pair of scissors and snip them off. But these are very comfortable, soft-soled. There's actually rubber or some sort of synthetic sole on it, that it's not really hard, but it wears well, better than leather does. I feel easy to walk quietly in these, and they don't fall down too much. Part of the problem with high boots is that this starts to sag too easily. You wind up with it around your ankle. These are holding up pretty well. One thing I can say as far as a Strider or Aragorn or General Middle-earth Ranger outfit kit, soft kit, is concerned, the only really concrete description we have for Strider is he was wearing a hooded cloak, and he had high boots on that fit him well. Everything else between is just up to your imagination and your own research and discovery. Above all, what's practical, right? And nothing plastic, of course. So there's ways to make your own boots. I elected to just buy these. I've made shoes myself. It's an interesting path. I didn't want to go that path. Maybe some other time in the future I will do that, and maybe I'll share it with you. Maybe you'll make your own and share with me. I'm looking forward to that. Let's see, what else can I say? In terms of Middle-earth Ranger reenactment, it's one thing to have a costume or a kit or an impression, as you would with a medieval reenactor. Think about how you use it, what's practical, what Tolkien had in mind. Try to combine all these together. I've done lots of different hobbies and different kinds of pursuits. This is very interesting to me because there's a practical aspect. Your feet are on the ground. You're actually doing stuff. You're learning old skills. You're enduring hardships and facing up to things. At the same time, you're researching how old practices were done and how old garments were put together. At the same time, you're connecting that to a total fantasy world, which has a tendency to be really, unconnected with the reality. Of course, it's fantasy, but the interesting thing is bringing parts of that together and connecting them. Some of them will never connect, like the magic. There's no dragons, I mean, there's some big lizards. This is about as close as we can get these days. But the other stuff, being like a, we want to say Robin Hood or Neolithic hunter or something like this, it's a satisfying experience, and to be able to connect with a great series of fantasy novels respected by all is a real privilege. So this is where I thank you for watching, and I hope I've inspired you and informed you and showed you some pathways that you can follow. In return, if you're coming up with something, please show me what you've got. If you've got a picture, you want to make a video, learn the skills, show me what you have. And I'd be privileged to see that, and it'd be really, really pleased to see it too. Again, thank you. If you like this, please give it the thumbs up. If you want to see more, check to see if you've subscribed. I'm going to keep churning out more of these. I don't know how much longer I will be. I've got some new changes in the future, and I'll inform you about those when they become concrete. Anyway, thanks again.